Well, welcome back, everybody. This is the fourth in this 8-part series of our presentation, The Biblical Roots of American Civilization. The first one, as you remember, was on an overview of the whole presentation. Then we went into the source of American individualism. The second one was on, that was the second one. The third one was on the relationship between the individual and family and community through this, what is known as covenant theology. And tonight we're going to talk about what is referred to as prosperity economics. From the last talk, we were talking about the notion of covenant, that all aspects of human behavior, including our relationship with one another, our relationship with God, and all endeavors that human beings are engaged in, is covered under what they refer to as a covenant theology. And that in addition to this individual maturation, or this individual regeneration that was a part of this covenant theology, there was a sanctification of the social order. So we're considering the sanctification of the social order as a responsibility that they had because of entering into a covenant with God. And the family is at the center of that social order, is the cornerstone of that social order. And intimately related, intricately related with family behavior and family activity is the discipline of economics. We don't recognize that today because we have a separation of disciplines. But originally, the term economics comes from a Greek word ekonome, which is loosely translated into English the science of household management. So a broader understanding of economics ties it very closely with the management of the household or the family, and which is so because the family is considered the cornerstone of a society. So the management, economy is the management of the society, and it starts with the management of the family. So the word ekonome in Greek is the science of household management. This understanding was expressed by Ludwig von Mises, is considered one of the most prominent free market thinkers. Austrian School of Economics, and he wrote a lot coming, around the turn of the 20th century. And he was writing in favor of free market economics and opposed to the rise of collectivist social planning or socialism. Now, he himself was not a religious person. He was utilitarian, but he understood the importance of the family to a free society. In his treatise on socialism, he wrote, he's an economist, he wrote a treatise on socialism, and he had a whole chapter on the family. And so you say, well, what is an economist doing writing a whole chapter on the family and a treatise on free market economics? And he was explaining that the socialist approach to economics, one of the targets, yes, they want to target private property, but they also want to target the family. Because if you're going to socially engineer society, you cannot have a social dynamic that is outside the control of the social engineers. So one of the targets of any utopian totalitarian ideology is to undermine the family unit. Conversely, one of the cornerstones of any true free market society is the family unit. So this is something that was understood and expressed in the writings of Ludwig von Mises, who was not even a religious person. So now what I would like to go into is the process by which our the founding generation got to the point where they recognized that free market economics is the way to go, and is more compatible with a free society. It wasn't just a theory that, this is a good theory, we're going to try this theory, but the theory followed experimentation. We're going to try this and see if it works. And so I want to talk about now, there was a booklet, an electronic booklet. It's on the internet. It's by an economist named Gary North, and it's called Puritan Economic Experiments. So he's writing about the experiments of the early Puritans from the time they came here up until the early 1700s. It was a period of experimentation. And they experimented with what we would refer to today as a kind of a socialist approach to economics. And again, this wasn't, well, let's try this experiment, see if it works. They actually were in a really dire situation. When the Mayflower came over, after the Mayflower came over here, in the winter of 1620 to 1621, almost half of them died of either cold, starvation, disease. So about half, practically half of their colony is wiped out, in that first winter. And in addition to cold and disease, there's hunger. And then during this time in January, a fire struck their common storehouse. And what meager possessions they had, some of it was wiped out. So they're struggling with cold and disease and starvation. Their common warehouse is wiped out, and they're trying to get back on their feet. And then in the fall of 1621, another ship comes over with about 36 people who are practically starving. So they have to take care of them too. So they're in a situation of economic deprivation that we can only imagine. I mean, it rivals any third world situation we can think of. I mean, this is starvation subsistence level. So what are we going to do about this? We need, our very existence is at stake. So they believed in the sanctifying of the social order, which has practical consequences. So they thought they could fix this situation if they followed what they considered to be biblical principles. And I haven't seen direct quotes, but a lot of people who experiment in these kind of things do so because of in the Gospels they see this common ownership of property, and they see this supposedly, and they see this injunction, against greed and for sharing and all this stuff like that. So they tried this experiment, and the experiment had three parts to it. The early experiment was in common ownership of property, to hold everything in common, so you didn't have direct private property. The second part of the experiment was wage and price controls, and which is obvious. We all know what that is. And then you had what is called sumptuary legislation. Now we're going to go into each one of these a little bit, but I want to focus first upon the common ownership of property, which we touched on a little bit in the overview. And there was an experimentation with this, and it didn't work. And Governor Bradford had noted in his writings, and you can, if you ever have a chance to go on the internet and you look up the writings of Governor William Bradford, and he noticed at this time that the people found a lot of excuses to get out of doing their work when they had common ownership of property. The men weren't quite as industrious. The women were finding all kinds of ailments and stuff like that. So, I got to stay home, I can't. So he's beginning to wonder if this really works. And they finally came to the conclusion that this idea is more reminiscent of Plato than the Bible. And he referred to it as Plato's conceit, as if they were wiser than God. So then they notice in the Bible, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, assumes the neighbor has a right to private property. So that doesn't jive with this common ownership idea. Or thou shalt not steal. If you don't steal something that belongs to someone else, it indicates a sanction on private property. So now there's a quandary. How do you reconcile this with the New Testament notion, teachings of Jesus, give all that you have, sell all you have, give it to the poor, and come and follow me. It is harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. How do you reconcile this with this notion of private property? So I wanted to distinguish the difference between sharing and forced distribution, and particularly through a central agent who is going to compensate that and then distribute